From Washington, D.C., this is Middle East Focus.
Welcome to the Middle East Institute. My name is Intissar Fakir. I am Senior Fellow and Director of the North Africa and Sahel Program. On September 8th, Morocco held its national, regional, and local election, the first time Moroccans vote for all three elections at the same time and during a pandemic. To help us understand more about the elections, the context in which they took place, and the broader political trends they portend, I'm joined by Dr. Maati Monjib, a Moroccan historian and longtime analyst and observer of North African and African affairs. Also joining me from Rabat is Dr. Rachid Aourraz. Rachid is a non-resident fellow at MEI's North Africa and Sahel program. He is an economist and a founding member of the Moroccan Institute for Policy Analysis. Welcome, Maati and Rachid, and thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yesterday, voters chose among candidates from 31 political parties and coalitions that competed for 395 seats in the lower house of parliament and representatives for 678 seats in regional councils. The results came in with a big surprise for the Islamist Justice and Development Party, which saw a shocking loss from 125 seats in the 2016 parliamentary election to just 12 this round. The PJD's liberal opponents, the National Rally of Independents, came in first with 97 seats, and the Authenticity and Modernity Party came in second with 82 seats, and traditional center-right Istiqlal Party followed with 78 seats. But before we talk about the election results, let's take a step back with you, Maati. Can you help us understand why this is an important election?
Yes, it is a different election because there is no strongly popular party participating in it. And this is for the new time since the 90s. Also, the media, state media, and a good part of the private media are currently totally really controlled by the state and by the political regime. Also, there is, for the first time under the reign of Mohammed VI, there is a high level of manipulation of the results. And we have some proofs. And also I knew last Sunday by a friend that the Ministry of Interior gave some instructions to some authorities in big towns not to give, all the reports of the votes. And some parties, and mainly PJD, said that they didn't receive in some very important towns for PJD the reports. The reports weren't given by the authorities under the supervision of the Ministry of Interior to their representatives. There is also another thing that it is also the first time since the 70s that there is now true popular campaign under the pretext of anti-COVID confinement. There was very little popular participation. The meetings were very small and so on.
Okay, thanks, Maati. So you were saying essentially that, the campaigning didn't quite take place to the extent that maybe the Islamist Justice and Development Party usually campaigns. There is a pandemic. There is, of course, a new election law that changed the way seats are allocated. So there were a number of things that were different about this election. But given this context, what's your main takeaway from the results, and how do you expect the government formation to play out over the next few weeks?
I think the next government, it will be formed but at least by the three leading, parties in this pool. The National Rally of Independence, led by Aziz Ahnouch, and by the PAM, But I remember that the leader of the PAM warned that if his party does not lead the government, I mean to be the head of the government, he won't participate. But maybe there will be a negotiation with the regime, and one of the two parties will lead the government. And I think it will be the PAM, even if the rally of independence came first, I mean. And also, I mean, there is a lot of outcry in the suburbs of some towns that there was a really falsification of some results, mainly against some PGD leaders. And this also is the first time. This is also the first time under the reign of Mohammed VI.
So these allegations that you were talking about, what sort of recourse would there be to address these allegations if they gain, if the parties actually speak out against them, if the PJD were to say, okay, there's something happened, we'd like to have, an investigation. So what would the process look like of looking into these allegations?
Yes, they have the right to go, before justice and suit a file against X or against those who they think they falsified or they influenced in an illegal way the results. But we have some data. For example, a lot of people in Facebook showed that they received a letter from the local authorities, and with inside it, a bulletin of some pro-regime parties, only the bulletin of these leading parties. And also the small makhzan, what we can name as small makhzan, muqaddam and shuyukhs participated, and this also is the first time in about 20 years, participated in the campaign for the National Rally of Independence. And all this will influence the coming years in Morocco. The political situation and the political climate, and maybe will increase the anger of the population against the confinement, against the social and economic conditions that are not very good in Morocco.
So, as we talk about these sort of challenges that the country is facing, Rachid, I'd like to come to you and have you explain to us, how do you characterize the main challenges that are going to be facing the incoming government? And how do you think the results of the election will determine how these challenges are going to be tackled?
Very good and big question. I think that after COVID-19, the most urgent program for any potential government is to pay more attention to economic issues. In Morocco, we have multiple challenges. For example, tourism has stopped working since March 2020. The informal sector is suffering. Youth and women no longer have opportunities in the job market. All these problems must be solved urgently. I think the next government must also answer the same questions, old questions, reforming education, improving the healthcare, creating job opportunities, and fighting corruption. According to surveys, for example, from Arab Barometer or MEPA Institute surveys, there are the 4 priorities for the Moroccan ordinary citizen. Also, the new government must continue the institutional reforms started so far because, for me, I think institutional reforms improve the attractiveness of country abroad and encourage local investors to do more for the economy and for the employment market. In addition, the new development model 2020-2035 need to be implemented in the agenda of the next 3 government, not only the next government, which is challenging issues both for the palace and government alike. In 2015, an education reform was launched under the name National Strategic Vision 2015-2030 for education, training and scientific research initiated by the Moroccan Higher Council for Education and chaired by an advisor to the king. In April 2021, the state launched another big project that took the name Generalization of Social Protection. This project target initially farmers, craftsmen, professionals, traders, service providers, and auto entrepreneurs, and will be extended in a second phase to other categories with a view of to ensuring the effective generalization of social protection to all citizens. In this sense, this project was prepared by the current finance minister, member of the Irini party. I think without external shock, now government can change the priorities of the state and the palace.
Thanks for that, Rachid. I think as you are talking about sort of governance and the government's priorities, looking at the way that Morocco has responded to the pandemic over the past year and a half, it wasn't perfect, but it was much more effective than, the way neighboring countries, for example, managed it. This response was led primarily by the palace and has also bolstered the palace and the central government, the sort of central appointed structures compared to the elected structures. How do you think the results of the election will impact the question of decentralization and decentralization efforts that really have shaped government performance and Moroccan governance priorities for the past 10 years? How do you think this will proceed given the election results right now?
I think the yesterday election results show that the bureaucracy won the elections. RNA, Rassemblement National des Indépendants, and PAM, Parti Authenticity et Modernité, the first and second parties, were created and supported by the administration. And 4 of the 8 parties in parliament today are administration parties. In Morocco, the bureaucracy rules. Regionalization is a project to decentralize power, but in my opinion, it has failed. The central bureaucracy simply did not want to carry out this administrative reform. The COVID-19 pandemic has given the bureaucracy a better chance to govern. Elected officials were marginalized, and the administration handled confinement, health emergency, curfew, and the distribution of social assistance. COVID-19 is a godsend for the big bureaucracy in Morocco and the central power, as in all developing countries in Africa, South America, also maybe Asia. Let us not forget we have today those who are today inspired by the model of CCP, Chinese Communist Party, as a very centralized power. The pandemic has overturned the meaning of power here and in all developing countries. I am more astonished by what happened in Tunisia. A president without a party and without a majority in parliament took full power and cancelled all institutions. It is surprising, but the context under the COVID-19 is not at all normal for me.
So you are essentially saying the central government is more powerful. This is what we are going to likely continue to see over the next 5 to 10 years. And so the final question for me to both of you is, is there anything else that you would sort of predict about the relationship between the government and the palace that might play out moving forward from here on? And maybe I'll start with you, Maati, and then I'll come back to you, Rachid.
I forgot also to say that it is the first time since the 90s also that this election was organized under a climate of fear because of all this, people arrested, journalists, activists, and also smear campaigns and defamation campaigns led by by outlets very close to the power, if you want, to the regime. So I think, the relationship between the cabinet, if you want, and the palace will be smoother during, the next 5 years, because there will be only pro-regime parties, and also that, the power of the Makhzen administration and also of the regional authorities will be much stronger, because there will be now resistance. This resistance was shown by the PGD elect people in regional and local councils during the last 10 years. So now, if you want, the old Makhzen elite is back 100% to business, and it will totally dominate the political situation and also the decision-making process on the economic and social levels.
Wonderful, Maati. Rachid, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it will be a government like any other one. There will be no power struggle. We are going to see a lot of the same profiles in the government. For me, I think more of the opposition. By 12 parliamentarians, Islamists are a minority in parliament. They will not be able to oppose the government. Also, there is no longer strong left in Morocco. For me, this is not good for democracy nor for the consolidation of political institutions in Morocco. I hope that the state will not be the opposition to this government in the next years.
Thank you both. I think we'll leave it there because that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for tuning in, and be sure to read MEI's latest on Morocco and North Africa at the North Africa and Sahel program on our website. Thank you, Rachid and Maati, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to our audience for listening and to our production team for their work on today's program.
This has been a presentation of the Middle East Institute. To support MEI's programs and podcasts, please donate at www.mei.edu. Thank you for your support.